Thank you. You may be seated. You are all welcome to this mini plenary. Vote 19. May I please ask the secretary to read the order?
Debate on vote number 19, Social Development Appropriation Bill.
Thank you. I will now recognize the Honorable Minister of Social Development, Mageb.
Yazi ke sengizofundiswa ngoku. Ku-right God. Honorable Chairperson, thank you very much for this opportunity on a cold day in Cape Town. And as we are here on a cold day in Cape Town, our hearts and mind must also go to the people who are homeless, who are sitting on the streets, who have absolutely nothing. May I, Chairperson, also indicate the Department of Social Development has now developed a document, a paper that is going to help us look into what needs to be done with all the homeless. We need that policy position. My colleague, the Deputy Minister of Social Development, Honorable Henrietta Bogopa-Nezulu, ministers and deputy ministers present, and I know that some are on the virtual platform, Honorable Chairperson and members of the Portfolio Committee, the DSD family and DSD portfolio, the Acting Director General, Mr. Linton Kunu, SASSA CEO, Ms. Dotsi Memela Kambule, National Development Agency Representative, Mr. Kolile Brukwe, Chairperson of the NDA Board, by the way, Chairperson Wetumanje, Miss Ruth Bengu, I'm sure Nyamaz Nonke, and members of the board, Chairperson of the Central Drug Authority and Board, Ms. Nandi Mayatula Koza, honorable members of the National Assembly, ladies and gentlemen, South Africans, nonke niphelele lani khona lani lalele khona. Honorable Chairperson of this session, thank you for the opportunity to present the 2023-24 budget vote for the Department of Social Development under the theme DSD at Work, Leaving No One Behind. As we consolidate the work and commitments that we have made in the sixth administration, particularly in terms of the investments we have made in people and through our various interventions to ensure that we improve their quality of life. That is, focusing primarily on protecting the poor and the vulnerable from poverty and inequality. We present this budget vote to you during the National Child Protection Week that we launched under the theme, Protection of Children During and After COVID-19 and Beyond, in recognition of the need for resilience where children are affected by shocks and disasters. In the same breath, the matter of newborn babies that were recently reported to have been placed in cardboard boxes instead of incubators or crib beds in the neonatal ward in the Mahikeng Provincial Hospital is among the harmful instances that warrants our collective wisdom and solution so that they do not occur ever after. This annual commemoration serves as a reminder that our country's children are the embodiment of the future of our society. Consequently, when every member of our families and communities actively invests her or himself in ensuring that no child suffers any form of neglect, abuse, violence, or exploitation, we will each be investing in a safer, more productive, and prosperous South Africa. For this reason, Chairperson, we should continuously strive to improve the prospects of patriotic and productive future South Africans today. Among others, the Child Protection Week highlights the fact that the success of all child protection efforts lie in integrating the responsibility into everyday life throughout the year and over one's life. We also bring to you this budget during the Africa Month, the month during which our collective as South Africans are joining fellow Africans throughout the world in commemorating the founding and predecessors of the African Union, namely the Organization of African Unity in 1963. Whereas South Africans believe that as Africans, we have solutions to the challenges that we are encountering, they also stand firmly behind the promotion and achievement of all aspects of Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. Honorable Chairperson and members, we note that we are presenting this budget vote in the backdrop of yawning inequalities between South Africans, the rising cost of living, record high unemployment rate of 32.9%, a stagnating economic growth, and shrinking fiscal space. A case in point is the increase of the rate of lending money to a 14-year high of 11.75% last Thursday. Compounding these dim economic prospects are the health, social, and climate shocks and disasters that South Africa continued to endure throughout the sixth administration. Consequently, this budget vote adds to our concerted pushback against the elements, shocks, and disasters that are an affront on the people. Honorable Chair, as we are tabling the 2023-24 budget vote, we reiterate our most pressing concern, that is the social development budget allocation has not kept pace with our growing population and the complexity of their social development needs. Equally concerning are the rising costs of underfunded mandates which this portfolio is expected to implement. In this regard, we look forward to working with the honorable members, as we always do, to correct these resource shortfalls towards ensuring that we meaningfully attend to the aspirations of the people. It must have been against the state of the people that arises from intolerable conditions, such as the ones I have just described, that the literary genius of our times, Ben Okri, wrote a poem that he titled Is Humanity Exhausted?, in which he cautioned, and I quote, "I hear them talk about the end of history, but those of us who haven't tested the best fruits of time, to whom history has been harsh, we think differently. We know that history is all there to be made in the future." End of the quote. Honorable Chairperson, yes, beyond our political differences, the state of the people of South Africa is a serious matter for every one of us, for the reasons that the improvement of the state of the people takes precedence over anything else. And in tabling the budget vote 19 of the Department of Social Development, I'm calling upon each one of us to join efforts in addressing multifaceted challenges that afflict them. Here are the priorities, and working together in pursuit of realizing the aspirations of the people of South Africa during the 2023-24 financial year, we will give priority to the following. 1, building a capable, responsive, ethical, and fit for purpose social development portfolio. And this, obviously, Chairperson, calls for our systems to be jacked up, calls for the civil servants or the officials who have to do their work on day-to-day basis to be committed to doing this and being efficient in the process of doing that. 2, working together with other mandates, government departments, we will produce South Africa's poverty alleviation strategy, which includes the policy on the basic income grant support for 18 to 59-year-olds who are not working. 3, optimizing the performance of non-profit organizations, NPO, while implementing a risk-based supervision framework that will prevent the abuse of NPOs in money laundering, terrorism, financing, and proliferation financing. And you know, Honorable Chair, that we were grey listed and we have to do everything we can to come out out of grey listing. And part of the reason we were grey listed is also with how the money floats within the NPOs. 4, strengthening the provision of care and support services for survivors of gender-based violence and femicide through the provision and operationalization of shelters, economic participation, and psychosocial support services. And this, for us, Honorable Chairperson, is something that we all have to work with together, because South Africa cannot afford to continue to be on top when countries are listed that have a problem of gender-based violence. 5, expanding community-based childcare and protection services, as well as early intervention services for older persons and persons with disabilities. And the DM has been crisscrossing the country, Chairperson, in terms of ensuring that persons with disabilities are also taken care of. 6, creating employment opportunities for social service professionals who address the social behavioral change challenges and help curb the rise of social ills. 7, scaling up interventions that address the scourge of alcohol and substance abuse and the associated challenges of gangsterism. 8, developing and operationalizing the National Integrated Social Protection Information System, which we call NISPIS, with a view to derive the value of integrating service delivery data, and from which the quality and reliability these services can be improved. 9, working with stakeholders across government, the private sector and civil society sector, the social development portfolio will improve its disaster preparedness, coordination, and responsiveness. And here we have the experience already, Chairperson. We know what has been happening in our provinces. We just need to sharpen and respond on time to our people. 10, devising economic participation interventions that particularly target our programs' pre-existing youth beneficiaries. So the 2023-24 budget vote, having identified these priorities, I'm tabling budget vote 19 of the Department of Social Development as follows. 1, the total budget allocation for the National Department of Social Development for 2023-24 financial year is 263 billion. Included in this amount is an amount of 253 billion that consists of direct cash transfer payments that SASSA expects to pay to a projected 27 million eligible grant beneficiaries by March 2024. SASSA's allocation accounts for an estimated 96.4% of the department's total budget over the MTEF period, which goes directly to the hands of beneficiaries. This is what needs to be appreciated, that the bulk of our budget is money that goes directly to the beneficiaries. The department's total allocation for 2023-24 financial year includes an additional 41 billion that will be directed towards 1, the implementation and administration of COVID-19 SRD 350, as it is popularly known, until March 2024, as announced by Honorable Minister of Finance, 35.7 billion and 400 million respectively. 2, the inflationary increases of the value of the grants, 5.8 billion. And 3, the compensation of employees, 15 million. The department's total budget allocation includes an amount of 7.8 billion for SASSA's administration of grants. 220 million will be transferred to the National Development Agency for its entity to carry out its mandate as legislated in the National Development Agency Act 108 of 1998 as amended. And we do want to indicate, Chair, that we are not very happy with this amount of money because this is not enough, but we are hoping that NDA will also be creative in the process and connect to the private sector and connect to other stakeholders to make sure that this money is augmented. Honorable Chair, having distributed these amounts accordingly, an amount of 951 million remains for the department's management and operations budget. This amount is further reallocated towards support services programs as follows. Administration, 426 million, social security policy and administration, 116 million, social welfare services, 267 million, and for social policy and integrated service delivery, 141 million. And the key programs which we are going to be focusing on as a department in this financial year. These programs of the social development portfolio will particularly focus on realizing the following deliverables during 2023-24 financial year. 1, administration. The reason for existence of this program is to provide leadership, management, and support services to the department and social development sector. 426 million is allocated to this program. Among others, the program will continue to improve governance and institutional control measures at all levels. As part of this program, strategic vacancies will be filled during 2023-24 financial year. In addition, SASSA targets to reach children who are below the age of 1. In so doing, SASSA will be ensuring that the number of prospective beneficiaries within this age band is duly identified and does benefit from diverse statutory services that social development portfolio offers. And this, the DM reminded us very well yesterday. Thank you, DM. Ultimately, this will contribute to the visibility, improvement, and accessibility of portfolio services at the community level. 2, comprehensive social security administration, that is program 3. This program is responsible for the development of social security policy and administration of social grants, as well as ensuring that administrative justice is enforced within respect to social grants. 116 million has been allocated to this program. The social development portfolio continues to implement special COVID-19 social relief of distress. 3, welfare service policy development and implementation support, that is program 4. Whereas this program exists to create an enabling environment wherein developmental welfare services can equitably be delivered, 267 million has been allocated for its implementation. In the 2023-24 financial year, this program is going to focus on strengthening care, protection, support, promotion, and advocacy of the rights of children, older persons, and people with disabilities, improving interventions that are aimed at moving children from vulnerability to resilience by means of integrating key services such as nutrition provision, educational support, psychosocial support, etc. Together, the establishment and operationalization of gender-based violence protection shelters in metropolitan district municipalities that do not have them, as well as Khuseleka centers in 3 provinces where there are none. Also, while partnering with civil society, universities, and private sector, this year the program will be intensifying the fight against substance abuse. And this is one of really the core of the work of the Department of Social Development. Social Policy and Integrated Services Delivery Program 5, the rationale for the existence of this program is to develop and facilitate the implementation of community development services that will enable the poor, the vulnerable, and the excluded among South Africans to build sustainable, vibrant, and healthy communities and secure a better life for themselves. An amount of 141 million has been allocated for this purpose. This program is the department's primary mechanism with which conducive environment enabled for the creation of vibrant and sustainable individuals, families, and communities. The department's intervention that target poverty alleviation, capacity building, and community level, community mobilization, and economic linkages of beneficiaries are expressed through this program. And yes, here, Chairperson, honorable members, we do want to not to be known as just a department of consumption, but we also want to be known as a department that deliberately looks at the grant beneficiaries and look at those that we can empower beyond giving them the social grant. Through provincial social development departments, the delivery of social welfare services is estimated to result in an expenditure of 65.2 billion over the medium-term expenditure framework. And Chairperson, I now focus on the National Development Agency. The NDA has been allocated 220 million in this financial year to contribute towards government's effort to reduce poverty and create job opportunities through grant funding and capacity building to society's organization. The agency is expected to create 3,000 job opportunities in the current financial year. On this number, 2,300 will be created through the implementation of the volunteer program that will be funded by the presidential employment stimulus packages. Yesterday, I was in an activity of the Child Protection Week, and I was very happy to see at the University of Cape Town that they had volunteers who came, and I was saying to the volunteers and I was saying to the university, our society needs these volunteers. Our society needs people that can walk the streets of South Africa to go and find out from time to time what is paining our people. And therefore, it's important for us to take care of the volunteers, because at the university, these are university students who have made it, who have taken a decision that they will be part and parcel of the future of South Africa. With regard to the implementation of the partnership model, the NDA has signed a new agreement with the Unemployment Insurance Fund, UIF, to the value of 103.5 million. This will be directed towards funding venture creation and sustainable livelihoods initiatives that will benefit 1,975 UIF beneficiaries. In addition to grant funding, the agency will support an average of 3,000 civil society organizations per year by strengthening institutional areas such as governance, compliance, financial management, reporting, and conflict resolution over the MTEF period. Here, honorable members, we really have a serious problem amongst organizations who sometimes want us to keep putting the money in there, and yet they are not accountable. And we are saying they have to be accountable. Now, moving on to effects. To give effect to the district development model, the NDA will be piloting one project per district in all 9 provinces to enhance sustainable livelihoods and social entrepreneurship opportunities for rural communities. The new NDA board, under the leadership of Ms. Ruth Bengu, brings incisive experience and expertise of the development landscape that are necessary in providing NDA with strategic direction. Now moving on to SASSA, Honorable Chair, very briefly, let me congratulate the entire DSD team for receiving this year Africa Month, the prestigious 2023 Good Practice Award in Social Security for Africa. This was recently conferred on SASSA by the International Social Security Association, ISA, through its Regional Social Security Forum in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire. The 2023 Good Practice Award in Social Security for its meritorious recognition of SASSA's extension of the child support grant to vulnerable children in communities throughout the country. The DSD's entry was chosen from among 48 member institutions of the continent. In addition, SASSA received 2 certificates of merit. 1, the responsive implementation of social relief of distress, SRD, for victims affected by regional floods in KwaZulu-Natal province, as well as 2, the innovative implementation of special COVID-19 SRD in response to the advent of COVID-19. The recognition of our work at regional and global level is an inspiration to our frontline personnel who relentlessly work towards meeting the aspirations of all South Africans through innovation. Indeed, SASSA stands among premier social security institutions of the African continent and the world. Further, this award is explicitly saying to all of us in social development portfolio, continue to be the innovators of regional and global best practices, as well as trailblazers where this concerns serving the people. During the financial year, SASSA will implement office accommodation improvement strategy in 54 identified offices, focusing on physical accessibility, alternative power supply and network connectivity, among others. This translates in 6 provinces, in 6 offices per province. In the same vein, the queue management system that SASSA piloted on the previous financial year has been proven to be highly effective. Honorable Abrams, I know you're listening. Consequently, this financial year, SASSA will be implementing its use in 27 SASSA local offices across the 9 provinces within the first quarter of the financial year. SASSA expected to complete its business process re-engineering. This has to go very fast because business process re-engineering is what is going to help SASSA to be much more efficient in its work. A timely initiative by SASSA, a partnership collaboration that this entity is entering into with a view to link selected grant beneficiaries with short-term skills, training, and economic opportunities. Chairperson, here I might take this opportunity also ask honorable members to help us here. I've been in a few places where I felt that grant beneficiaries are now being bullied and told in schools that now you are not, your parents can't take care of you. And so many of them are afraid of even telling that they are grant beneficiaries. So we will raise the bar and make sure that we take these grant beneficiaries and introduce them to their future, because we need the grant beneficiaries to have the confidence that what government is doing is to lift them out of poverty so that in their future, they can be able to take care of themselves. I've also met a few very interesting people, Honorable Chair, who stood up and said, I am the CEO of a global company and I am a beneficiary of the social grant. And I've said to them, go out and talk to the others, go out and show the grant beneficiaries that it is possible. And in conclusion, Honorable Chairperson, last June, we introduced the top-up child support grant as part of the legal solution to address foster care backlogs. Nearly a year later, I remain concerned about the low uptake rate of this grant. In the quest to increase this number throughout the course of this financial year, we are going to embark on a nationwide multimedia communication campaign. And by the way, we have our own TV now. So you comrades and friends and everyone, you are going to log into our own DSD TV so that we can be able to tell you the information directly. And here we're going to call everybody. It's not about us who are in government. Everybody who matters, who is important, who has something to say about how we can improve our system. We'll see you on DSD TV. As I conclude, this budget vote continues to fulfill the commitment of the 6th administration to improve the provisions of the services that we render to the public. In as much as it materializes the benefits of social protection and developmental social welfare for vulnerable South Africans, it further translates the guidance of the African National Congress that 2023 should be the year of decisive action to advance the people's interest as well as to renew our society. Consequently, suggestions that seek to divide us where the people are concerned are nothing short of stubborn paths that weaken our strength as a collective. And I, as a Minister of Social Development, can tell the people of South Africa that we and the Portfolio Committee, both the members of the ANC and all other opposition members, we work very well. And we appreciate, by the way, you're chasing us because you want things to be right for the people of South Africa. So we are saying to you, keep that going, because when you do so, you are helping us to sharpen our system. To those of us who are in the social development portfolio, inclusive of the Department of Social Development, SASSA and NDA, and 9 provincial departments, the dim background that I painted earlier exacts additional demands on our responsibility to protect South Africans against the indignity of poverty, incomelessness, hunger, and the vicious recurrence and reinforcements of social ills. Let us find our inspiration from the historical framing of the Freedom Charter, wherein the people resolved that no one should go hungry, and that, and I quote, the aged, the orphans, the disabled, and the sick shall be cared for by the state, and I close quote, and cared for by the state goes beyond the state. Cared for, this should start with our families, house to house, street to street, community to community. And I personally believe that parents in particular must not abdicate their responsibilities when it comes to taking care of the children. And this is not just a woman's issue alone. Both men and women must take responsibility. In the quest to raise the majority of South Africans above the challenges that afflict them, the Department of Social Development strives to be embodiment of the hope that carries people into a life that is free from indignity and lack of. Honorable Chair and members, I extend my heartfelt appreciation to my colleague, the Honorable Deputy Minister, the provincial MECs, and the acting DG and the department, the MEC, the SASSA CEO and NDA CEO, and everyone else, including the Drug Central Authority chairperson and the board, as well as Langi Malamba, the chairperson of the Central Authority Board. I also wish to take this opportunity to thank the provincial members of the Executive Council for Social Development for always being there. And lastly, and not least, I thank my family, the people who wish me to be there, but I'm hardly ever there. The people who appreciate the fact that I, like all others who are in this room, everyone who in this room, we do the best. We put our first foot forward to make sure that the people of South Africa will have confidence that we'll do everything we can to change their lives. I think, most importantly, I must thank my grandchildren, all 8 of them, and say to them, ukhona ugogo uzobeloko enisebenzela nani esebenzela nabo bonke. And Honorable Chair, I now table budget vote 19 of the Department of Social Development for consideration, and I wait for the questions, and thank you very much.
Thank you. I stole 1 minute from your other 10 minutes. So that I don't disturb you. It must be recorded as such. The next speaker is the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Social Development, Mamvana.
Thank you very much, House Chair, and good morning to our honorable members, stakeholders, listeners. Let me first start by the positive ones and request us to give a big applause for the department, the minister and the deputy minister, for getting a prestigious award of ISA. ISA means International Social Security Association. Can we give them applause? And with this one of the DST TV, it's our first time to experience that. We'll really enjoy to have it. How we wish also to have the toll-free number working on time and work very, very strenuous for the people of South Africa. House Chair, I will start by providing a safety net and protect the poor and vulnerables to sustain livelihoods. Let me remind honorable members and the House at large, the South African Social Security Agency was established in 2014 to manage social security in South Africa as per Act number 9 of 2004. Earlier, this program was called Social Welfare, that was administered by the Department of Social Development. Due to a number of challenges, Department of Social Development entrusted an agency administrator in this program. The agency accounts to the department, and the department has to account with issues related to social security in South Africa. The South African Constitution of 1996, I also want to remind the House, it's saying everyone has the right to have access to social security, including appropriate social assistance if they are unable to support themselves. Thus, the state has the responsibility to offer social grants to the people who are worse off in society, as it is a basic function of government, part of social programs in response to the people's needs. South Africa has one of the most extensive social welfare systems among the developing countries in the world. Our government supports more than 18 million people, and they receive some form of social grants provided by the department or by the government. The cash assistance program that are currently available, excuse me, which has been already mentioned by the minister, child support grants, foster care grants, old age grants, and disability grants, and over the war veterans grant. Not forgetting to mention the SRD. And you know, when you go around and you say you are from Parliament, whether you are coming from water and sanitation, people around you, they will ask about the 350. When am I going to get the 350? This program has contributed positively to poverty alleviation, alleviation in South Africa. Grants such as the Child Support Grant and the Old Age Pension improve the nutrition status and school enrollment rates of poor children and address child staffing. Then let me go to the second one, the governmental efforts to address the impact of COVID-19 and other types of disaster on the livelihoods. In March 2022, it's something that you also know, that COVID-19 pandemic broke out, finding a weak South Africa economy. In reality, the South African economy had been in a recession for 2 consecutive quarters before the pandemic hit our shores. COVID-19 pandemic, as a result, widened the economic crisis. Many people were experiencing hunger, many lost their jobs, and many have experienced extended periods of financial hardship. Poverty was predicted to increase, the inequality to expand. The required social and economic responses are supposed to meet or perhaps exceed the scale of the disruption created, given the extent of the destruction. In response to this crisis, President Cyril Ramaphosa communicated our determination as a country in responding of the COVID-19 crisis when he said, let me quote, "We are determined not merely to return our economy to where it was before the coronavirus, but to forge a new economy in a new global reality," close quote. As a result of the devastating state of our economy, the South African Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan was then put in place with an aim to build the South African economy that meets the needs of all our citizens. The government, as part of his social intervention, introduced a social relief distress that is of 350, which the also minister pronounced and read it before, that it will be at the end of March 2024, because you know communities are asking, how long are we going to get this 350 and when is it going to stop? Because they are panicking of when is it going to finish and end in there. We welcome the ongoing engagement with various social partners on the basic income grant, which is called BIG, which is critical to provide a sustainable safety net for the unemployed. We continue to receive positive acknowledgement by recipients of this grant, as it helps them alleviate hunger and to use it to search economic opportunities. As ANC, in Nazareth conference, we reaffirmed that the state has a particular responsibility to improve social protections and provide income support for vulnerable individuals and households. It has also resolved that SA system of social grants and welfare payments should be expanded to provide for basic income as fiscal space allows. Then let me go straight to governmental efforts to address other types of disaster. The department plays a critical role in responding to disasters. The department has to develop agile systems and processes to respond to disasters within the shortest possible period. We even said as portfolio committee, it mustn't be an infinitive thing. It must have its critical time frames. Civil society is also critical in this regard. The department should train civil society organization of disaster management responses to support future efforts. Then the other point is the advancement that the department has made in the field of social protection, especially how this has helped to reduce poverty. This positive impact of social assistance is significant in many townships, as it has, in fact, even in rural areas, it has been proven to ensure minimum living conditions and alleviate poverty and create a bigger impact in developing households. The social grant have a positive impact in terms of human development, in terms of education and health. Social grants improve the lives of South Africans, and it does not only improve household, but also contribute in terms of economy, as it helps people of South Africa to develop local economies by creating local markets and encourages investment due to the demand in the market and increased consumption spending. As we have heard from statistics, that 32.9 rate in terms of unemployment in 2023, especially in the first quarter. We are aware of that, and we are concerned about the age that is 18 to 59 years of old. Then we observed a recommendation of the budget vote report. The committee raised concern with regard to the recommendation that were made on previous budget vote reports, and observed that those recommendations were not implemented. Department.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The committee also agreed and endorsed the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Mama Sango, skati ngesakho.
Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, happy Africa Month and good morning. As we raise awareness about children's rights during Child Protection Week, we salute all those who work in the sector for their efforts in protecting the most vulnerable in our society, the children of this nation, as South Africa's soul is revealed in their tireless and selfless work. Honorable Chairperson, if the solving of the problems that we as members of the committee escalate to the department and its entities was a benchmark of how well the clients of the department are treated, we would be congratulating the minister and the department right now. Take, for example, a lady who is disabled and bedridden, who sends me a WhatsApp message to say she is concerned that she will not get her social grant due to her SASSA card expiring. SASSA officials spring into action and the problem is resolved within 48 hours. Or the elderly lady who is viciously sexually abused by a young man. While colleagues are dealing with SAPs, they ask me to involve DSD to arrange psychosocial support for the victim. Once again, a simple WhatsApp to a deputy director in DSD late at night is all it takes for her to swiftly proffer assistance. What about a gentleman holding a 777 identity document that expires and blocks his social grant? Yet again, simple access to an email to a SASSA executive and his team solves the problem until the ID expires yet again. These are a small fraction of the myriad of queries that receive urgent attention, and I would be failing in my duty if I didn't sincerely thank the department and its entities for rising to the occasion in these desperate circumstances, many of which are matters of life and death. But they are exceptions, not the rule, Honorable Chairperson. The rule is the hundreds, if not thousands, who don't know how to contact members of parliament and so languish in despair as they have no way of contacting SASSA because 435 SASSA offices are experiencing systems problems, while an additional 175 SASSA offices are beset by telephone problems. SASSA has experienced a myriad of changes in its social security offering, from cards expiring to a migration to cardless services, to SAPO offices closing in droves and SAPO ceding its agreement to Postbank. The list of challenges is endless, but the recipients are all the same: vulnerable South Africans. Without proper, clearly explained and real-time communication lines and alternatives, people are left destitute. DSD is one of the departments tasked to lead on the fight against GBVF, yet quarter after quarter, year by year, the victims of GBVF keep increasing. They have no hope of whether their government is protecting them. Chairperson, I'm not ignoring the budget vote. I'm merely trying to link numbers on a presentation to the committee on a Wednesday morning to real lives of South Africans whose daily struggles we dare not reduce to targets, plans, and summit, at great detriment to the lives and livelihoods of those on whose behalf we exercise oversight over the executive. The real struggles real people experience get lost in the translation of percentages, targets, and programs. In her remarks on the briefing by DSD on 2023-24 APPs and budget, the minister described the APPs as the DSD's final formal performance commitments within the current MTSF. And she said, and I quote, "By definition, this demands that through this APP, the department should round up and visibly, meaningfully, and responsively deliver on the commitments of the sixth administration of our democratic government." This noble summation by the Honorable Minister loses its meaning completely when you realize that the lived experiences of programs and NPOs serving the elderly, children, and people with disabilities in Gauteng, for example, had their budgets abruptly slashed to such an extent that many would have had to close their doors, while others will be forced to cut vital programs and services. It is clear that the department has not learned any lessons from the Life Esidimeni tragedy. MEC Hlophe's abrupt stoppage of life-saving subsidies to NPOs that perform statutory services is a massive blow to NPOs, a death knell to beneficiaries of the department's services. Honorable Minister Zulu must intervene before we see a repeat of Life Esidimeni, this time significantly much worse. High unemployment has increased numbers of those who have been converted to the client of the Department of Social Development, with the department's programs crumbling, not only because of sheer numbers, but because of woeful ineptitude, blatant lack of care, and total disregard for the department's noble mandate. Fellow South Africans, let's just be very clear. Contrary to the propaganda spread by the ANC, the DA would never take away social grants. In fact, a DA-led administration would increase child support grant to the above poverty line to strengthen beneficiaries' financial position to cope with the rising cost of living. The Democratic has without fail, provided solutions to each of the concerns we have raised to no avail. So stuck between the department and government that stopped caring for their people a long time ago and deepening poverty and hunger, we are emboldened to ensure that we implement our solutions when we govern this country in 2024. The Moonshot Pact is real, and South Africans can expect to be top priority of a government that has heeded their cries and witnessed their plight as we have crisscrossed South Africa. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Honorable Mare.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge my Commander-in-Chief, Julius Malema, my Deputy President, all the officials, commissars, fighters, ground forces I greet you today. Chairperson, when those of us who had been in the struggle for liberation of this country got disillusioned and angry with the ANC for betraying the hopes of many, a great many of our comrades died for. Many of us disengaged from active politics. That was until the clarion call was for economic freedom fighters was made in 2013, and we dusted ourselves up, roll up our sleeves and answer the call for the struggle for economic freedom in our lifetime. We are delighted, therefore, that this year marks 10 years of heroic struggles for the emancipation of the downtrodden, for the living wage for women so that they can take care of their children, for proper support to early childhood development centers, because we know those are the foundation upon which nations are built. Happy 10th anniversary to the economic freedom fighters. Chairperson, we reject this budget of the Department of Social Development. Minister, in the study released last year by the University of Cape Town, it was shown that there was about 2.9 million orphan children in this country, and this amounts to about 14% of all children in this country. If not lucky enough, we had a relative or a good Samaritan who would take care of them. Most of these children will grow up without the necessary support mechanism for the conducive development of a child. Despite the seriousness of this matter, the Department of the ANC members serving in the Portfolio Committee on Social Development have shown a middle finger to the plight of the children of this country. Despite the fight for a comprehensive legal solution for the problem of foster care for orphans and abandoned having been known for many decades, the department was quite found a solution to this problem. It was back in 2002 when the late Dr. Solis Kiwia announced that the foster grant care would be available for relatives providing care for orphan children. 2017, it took the Center of Child Law to take the department to court for provision of comprehensive care for abandoned children. Despite this, the ruling party has basically fumbled the opportunity for providing solutions for these problems when they actively sabotaged the Children's Amendment Bill last year, neglecting many provisions suggested by the committee and experts. Not only that, but the department had also abandoned those who suffer the impact of a chronic poverty. While on the 28th of May, the world commemorated World Hunger Day, here in South Africa, about 11.6% of South African households experience hunger. South Africa faces challenges ramping from high unemployment rate and poverty and rising cost of living. In this department has no imagination or plan to resolve the hunger problem. We know that the corrupt bunch of people associated with the ruling party has used SASSA for their own corrupt ends. There are millions that have been distributed and eligible recipients that has been no satisfactory investigation to find out who exactly is responsible for this and the recoup of the money. The Department of Social Development had been sitting with an acting director general for the past few years. The poor performance of this department can largely be blamed on the fact that there is no stability or accountability. This is proven by the fact that there is no timely finalization of outstanding disciplinary cases. There are no consequence management in the department. Going to the elections next year, we know that there will be a spike in the number of interventions and food parcels from this department. We want to warn the minister this department is for all South Africans who are in need for help every day. It is not a campaigning tool. We reject the budget. We also would like to say to the department that you are the department, the biggest department that can help the people of South Africa. And on this note, I want to invite each and everyone to our celebration on the 29th of July in Johannesburg. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The Honorable van der Merwe.
House Chairperson, good morning to our Minister, our Deputy Minister, our Chairperson of our Portfolio Committee, colleagues. House Chairperson, as we mark the start of Child Protection Week, our nation woke up to the tragic news of the brutal rape and murder of a 17-year-old schoolgirl, Palesa Malatsi. She now joins the long list of young women like Anine Boysen, Tsegofatse Pule, Karabo Mokoena, and many others who've lost their lives in a country at war with itself, where the state is unable to keep its citizens safe. May her departed soul find peace, and the IFP joins our nation in calling for justice for young Palesa. Chairperson, the ruling party once promised us a better life for all. Now 29 years since the dawn of our democracy, and they proudly proclaimed the creation of a welfare state as one of their greatest achievements. On 27 March 2023, President Ramaphosa said, and I quote, just over 2.5 million people were receiving social grants in 1999. Today, it's one of the greatest achievements of our democratic society that 18 million people are now dependent on a grant. While the Daily News ran with the following headline on 15 May 2023, and I quote, ANC banks on social grants to win the 2024 elections. House Chairperson, it goes without saying that we want a government that will lift our people out of poverty, not drive them further into poverty. And this is an admission by our own government that it has failed to restore the dignity of our people through job creation. Minister Makeba, we want to join you in the rollout of the basic income grant, but it goes without saying none of us came here today to approve a budget that will be used for election purposes. We want a budget that will restore the dignity of our people and that will lift our people out of poverty and restore hope. Chairperson, it goes without saying that with deepening levels of social despair comes deepening social ills. However, it's not clear how successful this department has been in the fight against gender-based violence. Gender-based violence keeps rising, and it's also not clear, for example, what the role of the Central Drug Authority is in terms of coordinating the fight against substance abuse, as substance abuse levels in our country keeps rising. This morning, while we are in this chamber, a young girl will be raped, adding to our ever-rising teenage pregnancy rates, while a young boy on the Cape Flats will be subjected to gang violence. Both children will have nowhere to turn to because there aren't social workers at their schools. Tonight, a child will sleep hungry because child malnutrition rates keep rising and there's no plan to combat that. Tomorrow, a young drug addict in a rural community will seek help, but there will be nowhere to turn to. And by the end of this week, a baby would have been abandoned because a crisis pregnancy doesn't mean that you've got access to state resources. Next month, a vulnerable child will still be languishing in a children's home because some in this department have taken an anti-adoption stance and therefore delay adoptions. House Chairperson, but it's when the state fails that NGOs stand in the gap, providing vital services on behalf of the state. But our NGO sector too is in crisis. And Honourable Minister, I wonder how you can spend money on a TV station when in fact people are starving and our NGOs are in crisis. In recent months, some NGOs in Gauteng and KZN in particular have had to close their doors as fundings have dried up from this department. This has impacted children, the elderly, disabled, and those living with HIV. SASSA too is in urgent need of interventions. Its telephone lines don't work. You can phone any of their telephone lines, you won't reach them. They are still crippled by corruption, and they still pay grants to people who are not eligible to receive their grants. There is no dignity in offices without chairs, with no shelter, no generators, no toilets, and beneficiaries sleeping outside SASSA offices overnight. Minister, we want a department that pays more than just grants. This budget before us must fund the social workers that are sitting at home. It must fund NGOs. The 350 must be linked to skills training, like the plumbing opportunities that the IFP-led Zululand municipality has made available to young people, and I'm glad you did touch on that. This budget must fund visible GBV, anti-substance abuse, anti-bullying, anti-gangsterism, and anti-teenage pregnancy interventions. Finally, Chairperson, we call for the safe abandonment of babies to be legalized alongside baby savers. Far too many women are abandoning babies in unsafe spaces because they've got nowhere to turn to. Chairperson, we cannot today support an ANC election budget, but we will support a budget that is a lifeline to an NGO, that is a stipend to a social worker, and a meal to a vulnerable child. The IFP will support your budget. I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable members, let us bring ourselves to the understanding of Rule 64E, which has been recently amended on the 30th of March. Any placards, dangerous, non-dangerous and non-threatening placards or articles, it should be through the permission of the speaker before you do it in the House. Thank you. I didn't have to disturb you because it was not a threatening one. But next time, please get the permission. Thank you. Honorable Briat.
Dankie, House Chair. Die departement en sy entiteite speel 'n kritieke rol in die samelewing vanaf SASSA toelaat tot nie winsgewende organisasies. Die mees weerloses is van die departement en sy entiteite afhanklik en word dag tot dag deur hulle gefaal. Kom ons begin by SASSA en die uitbetalings van toelaas. As die geld nie opraak nie, is die ooreenkoms nie geteken nie, dan is die stelsels van lyn af of is daar beerkrag en werk niks nie. Dit alles te midde die feit dat ons mees weerloses lê. Dan kom ons by die moeilikheid by die poskantoor, of sal ons sê dis die posbank. SASSA gaan beslis 'n ander oplossing moet kry as die toelaag-uitbetalings wat deur die posbank uitbetaal word. Die posbank het bewys dat hy is nie bevoeg om uitbetalings te hanteer nie. Dis nie geld wat deur werknemers gesteel is, geld wat by betalingspunte opraak, die stelsel wat ophak, OTM's wat onttrekkings van geld daarstel, maar die trekkers skryf fisies nie die geld nie en so stapel die krisisse op en die mees weerloses lê. Is dit nie tyd dat ons sê genoeg is genoeg nie? Wat verder kommerwekkend is die hele goue kaart debakel, is dat die posbank geweet het hierdie kaarte gaan verval. In 'n onlangse mediaverklaring het die posbank te kenne gegee dat hulle eers in die volgende paar weke 'n plan daar gaan stel met die uitrol van die hernuwing van kaarte. As gevolg van die proses wat die posbank nagelaat het, moes die Reservebank weer eens 'n sperdatum uitstel, maar is duisende trekkers deur die stelsel geval. Duisende SASSA begunstigdes moes vir ure in toue staan. Baie van hierdie begunstigdes is bejaard of het kwale soos artritis en diabetes en moes sonder die nodige geriewe klaarkom. Ons kan dankbaar wees, nie meer mense het iets oorgekom nie. Many rural and older clients remain reliant on the withdrawal of SASSA grants from SAPO offices, and SASSA themselves admitted that this remains a concern as the number of doctors are also a problem. The doctor shortage needs to be addressed with the utmost urgency, as does the crisis with Postbank. What is positive is the agency's plans to implement a fully automated grant application process, from e-applications to scanning supporting documents and the likes over the MTF period at a cost of 128 million rand. This will hopefully see the alleviation of the problems that SASSA are currently facing. What remains to be seen, however, is whether the annual performance targets will be met. Some of the most notable is the focus on improvement of organizational structure that will see 5% of social assistance debts recovered or submitted for writing off, 75% of current financial misconduct cases finalized within 120 days. 95% of backlogs of financial misconduct cases finalized. 90% of reported fraud and corruption cases investigated and finalized. 70% of labor relations cases finalized, and 90% of vacant funded posts filled. This is welcomed. But if SASSA does not get its house in order, we can rely on seeing more issues and not less. To get to the department itself, the department needs to start with appointing a DG and a CFO. This department has been without both for a very long time, maybe even years if I'm correct. Although the current acting incumbents are doing a good job given the circumstances, we need stability in a department as crucial as this. Die departement ervaar besonderse probleme wanneer dit by nie winsgewende organisasies kom en die minister het daarna verwys. Laatbetalings van subsidies is maar een van die probleme wat ervaar word. Kinderhuise is dan gewoonlik dies wat die swaarste trek hierom en onskuldige kinders is die wat weer eens ly. Ek is genader deur 'n nuwensgewende organisasie wat al vir meer as 6 maande sukkel om te registreer by die departement. Uiteindelik op die 20ste April het hulle dit gebleik dat hulle stawende dokumente agterstallig is. Op 21 April het hulle die ingedien en wou hulle seker maak dat alles in orde is en al die nodige dokumentasie ervaar is. Tot vandag toe nog kon hulle nie die departement in die hande kry nie. Ek het toe gister 'n oproep na die departement se nasionale callcenter gemaak en so ook die Vrystaat kantoor. Die nasionale callcenter se nommer bestaan nie en die Vrystaat nommers gaan nie eers deur nie. Dit is 'n skrikende skande dat hierdie nommers buite werking is en moet so spoedig as moontlik herstel word. Die departement faal Suid-Afrika, sy entiteite faal hulle begunstigdes. Suid-Afrika verdien beter. Ek dankie.
Dankie, agbare lid. Honorable Soekers has got permission to speak from the virtual platform.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. The ACDP rise this morning to extend our deepest condolences to the families of 5 children killed in a horrific accident on their way to school in Mitchell's Plain. May the Lord grant you comfort by His Holy Spirit in the midst of your sorrow. As we consider this budget, the ACDP wish to focus attention on the growing crises in the child sector. There is a critical need for a roundtable on the plight of vulnerable children and urgency for this committee to increase oversight on the work of the department in the sector. We have requested a roundtable, Minister, in committee and want to reiterate that call here today. Child activist and journalist Robin Wolfson Foster rightly commented that children is the constituency-based politicians and the state ignore because they do not protest or burn tires. This is at the very heart of the issues affecting children. Their voices remain silent even in the lawmaking and policy process. The state seek to close their schools without hearing their voices and effectively ignore their plight of homelessness and hunger by defunding NGOs in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. In the Karoo, there's only one YCC, Huis Triomf, serving the vast area of Oudtshoorn, Liugamka, De Rust, and Prince Albert all the way to Beaufort West. The ACDP sought a social partner for its doors to remain open, and the Barn Christian Church, under the leadership of Roelof Quant, heeded that call. Congregants who contribute to the billions available to this department committed another 1.5 million to restore dignity to 30 boys. Our call for further engagement on the growing need of vulnerable children in the Karoo to the MEC social development here in the Western Cape remain unanswered. We are calling for the capacity of Huis Triomf to be expanded and for protection services in the Karoo to be upscaled urgently. The war on children is in the numbers. Violence against children is widespread, with 1 in 3 children reporting some form of maltreatment. A 2013 study in the Western Cape found that 98.9% of adolescents had witnessed community violence. 40.1% had been a direct victim of community violence. 76.9% had witnessed home violence. 58.6% had been a victim of home violence, and 75.8% had either had direct or indirect exposure to school violence. 26% of adolescents have experienced some form of sexual assault. The impact of this on our nation will be seen in the decades to come. In closing, I want to acknowledge your commitment, Minister, by the continuation of the program with the community of Lavender Hill in Southern Peninsula, initiated by the ACDP and now driven by Western Cape Province and the National Department. This was a response by you on a budget vote 2 years ago. It is our hope that we can do exactly the same for children in the Karoo. God bless you.
Thank you so much. The Honorable Kwankwa.
Honorable Chairperson, thank you very much. The United Democratic Movement supports the budget vote 19 on social development. This department has an important duty and mandate to develop and implement programs aimed at eradicating poverty and ensure social protection and social development among the poor and the most vulnerable and marginalized. However, in our view, the department has not been able to implement the strategy insofar as ensuring that we have adequate or enough number of social workers servicing our people. For instance, it has not been able to address the long-standing issue of shortage of social workers. In July 2022, during the presidential Imbizo and oversight visit in Gauteng, you, Honorable Minister, and your department revealed that the country needs about 55,000 social workers to meet the demand for appropriate basic social welfare services. However, only about 17,500 social workers are providing services to communities around the country. Despite the dire need for social workers, more than 9,000 qualified social workers remain unemployed, and the department has not made significant strides to close this gap and employ more social workers. The shortage of social workers in particular serves as a stumbling block in response to the brutal effects of all forms of violence against women, children, older persons, and other vulnerable groups. The citizens in particular are deprived from receiving adequate social support as stipulated in the Probation Services Act number 116 of 1991. Minister, there also needs, when it comes to the developing an automated application process for the grant application, it needs to be simplified for our people so that the other important thing which I think the entire government needs to consider is the development of a digital profile for people. Once they are born, they have an identity number and a birth certificate, but maybe we should move towards developing a digital profile for South Africans, which would actually make it easier to process the grant system. The challenges faced by the post office, I don't think they fall in your department, but you can play your role to try and ensure that is resolved. We are of the view that there are still many people who receive 350 rands above all my money, primarily because the government has not been able to resolve the issue of the informal sector of the economy. Most of the people who earn 350 who are not supposed to be earning it, apart from the rogue elements from the administration, obviously, are people who are self-employed in the informal sector. Some of them are earning more than the minimum wage of 3,500 because we have not documented that and put steps in place to try and support that sector. We're not able to tell who earns an income and who doesn't. So that's Ogwazbane resources that we can channel to the most deserving members of our society. Thank you very much for support the budget vote.
Thank you, Honorable Kwankwa. The next speaker will be Honorable Heron.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, let me start by welcoming the Minister's comment that the department will develop a paper or policy for homelessness. Homelessness firmly resides within the social development space, and we cannot allow policing to be the solution or the response to street homelessness as we see across our country, the criminalization of people who are homeless. So we welcome that intervention, Minister. South Africa's deep inequality, its rampant poverty, weak economic growth, and woefully low job creation numbers leave us with no choice but to invest substantially in our social wage. Our constitution guarantees social assistance and social security for those unable to provide for themselves. And so while we would like an economy to provide jobs for all those who are looking for work, we still have a legal and moral obligation to ensure social assistance for those who, despite their desires and their dreams to work, simply cannot find jobs. For those who regard social security or any of our grants that we currently provide under our current social security system as a gift or a handout and not a right, you're hopelessly wrong. The people of South Africa who are unable to support themselves have a constitutional right to social assistance. We must and we do acknowledge the massive social support system currently in place in South Africa. 26.6 million grant beneficiaries is as substantial as it is depressing. The dream for our democratic South Africa was for much more prosperity and much less poverty. While acknowledging the substantial social security system already in place, we once again raise our concerns about the social relief of distress grant. Our first concern is the fact that the grant, already below the food poverty line, has remained stuck at 350 Rand per month, which by the department's own admission means a real decline in value considering inflation of 2.3%. The second concern is the persistent reference to the grant ending at the end of the current financial year, and thus the concomitant reference to the number of grant beneficiaries declining to 19.6 million. There is no way that we can withdraw the grant from 7 million beneficiaries without replacing it. Of course, we would like this grant to be replaced by a permanent basic income guarantee. In April 2022, the lower bound poverty line was 945 Rand per person per month. The National Development Plan includes a target of reducing the proportion of persons living below the lower bound poverty line to zero by 2030. Minister, it can be done, but it will require the courage to restructure our fiscal priorities, our allocations, and our social security system. We support the budget, but we urge you, Minister, to intensify the fights for the rights to social security, and we'll be at the forefront with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker will be Honorable Songo.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson, Honorable Minister and Deputy Minister, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, honorable members, good afternoon. Morning. Combating sexism, gender-based violence, femicide, and all other forms of violence and discrimination should be a priority for all sectors of society, as this is linked to the country's attainment of social justice and human rights. Members of society should become productive beings who can participate in the social, political, and economic development of an equitable and inclusive society. Honorable Chairperson, since the advent of democracy, the government has been focused on building a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic and prosperous society, which is a significant departure from the colonial and apartheid government method, which saw Black people and members of the LGBTQIA+ community faced with discrimination, marginalization, and persecution. Honorable House Chairperson, to promote gender equality and eradicate gender-based violence, the democratic government has implemented several progressive policies and laws. The Constitution has been one of the pioneering documents in guiding and defining the parameters of the type of society we should aspire to, including the protection against discrimination based on sexual orientation. The South African Constitution is regarded as one of the most progressive in the world, with well-defined legal frameworks and social values, underpinned by human rights which condemn all forms of violence and discrimination, safeguarding the rights of those who have been historically disadvantaged and oppressed. Honorable House Chairperson, South Africa has been a strong advocate for gender equality and the rights of LGBTQIA+ community on the continent and throughout the world. South Africa South Africa has been a strong advocate for gender equality and the rights of the LGBTQIA+ community on the continent and throughout the world. South Africa is party to numerous global goals that govern its standards and participation in achieving a universal coordination effort to reduce gender inequality and empower women and members of the LGBTQIA+. South Africa's active participation in advocating for gender equality on local and international platforms has contributed to shaping the global discourse on women's empowerment, gender-based violence, and the LGBTQI. This has resulted in increased awareness campaigns, challenging stereotypes, and advocating for the recognition of human rights for all, regardless of gender or sexual orientation. Despite the progress thus far, Honorable House Chairperson, there is still more work to be done in challenging and addressing the socio-economic conditions that breed and perpetuate discrimination, sexism, gender-based violence, and gender inequality. Poverty and unemployment and lack of access to education and other related socio-economic factors are the issues that must be addressed based on the principles and values of our democracy and the Constitution, which have developed a strong foundation for building a society based on equality and non-discrimination. Poverty is a crippling socio-economic reality that limits people's access to opportunities and quality to life. These limitations open up women and other marginalized groups, in particular, to different forms of violence, which range from psychological, mental, emotional, physical, and economical. There are numerous studies that affirm a correlation between poverty and gender-based violence. According to the UN Women, particular groups of women, including women and the girls living in poverty, face multiple forms of discrimination and face increased risk of violence as a result. Studies shows that poor girls are 2.5 times more likely to marry in childhood than those living in the wealthiest quintile. Women and girls living in poverty are more vulnerable to sexual exploitation, including trafficking. And those who experience domestic or intimate partner violence have fewer options to leave violent relationships due to the lack of income and resources. Honorable members, women and other marginalized groups may face violence in a number of ways according to their socioeconomic status and sexual orientation, such as financial abuse, stigma, exploitation, sexual harassment, and sexual assault. Due to the limited access generated by poverty, these groups may find themselves unable to access information and organization that can assist them, such as government programs, shelters, and legal aid. Therefore, victims stay trapped in violent situations because they are uninformed that there are alternate realities and processes available to assist them. Furthermore, gender-based violence comes at a great cost of victims, as the individuals may have psychological, mental, physical, and other effects as a result of their abuse, which may impair their productivity and capacity to work or maintain themselves financially. We need to expand social services for the provision of mental health and wellness programs. Addressing poverty and gender-based violence necessitates a concerted and coordinated effort on the part of all stakeholders in society, including communities, churches, government, and civil society. Adequate resources must be allocated to ensure the implementation of sustainable programs to reduce poverty in society, run educational programs on gender-based violence and femicide and other related matters, improve access to education and healthcare, and streamline victim support services such as shelters and legal aid. By tackling poverty and gender-based violence, we can work together, creating a more habitable and equal society for all. The Department of Social Development is committed to delivering social protection services as part of its mandate and directing government efforts to create partnerships that empower marginalized groups and communities to take an active role in their own development. The department has undertaken various interventions which are concerned with preventing, identifying, and addressing gender-based violence and femicide in communities and contributing to creating safe and secure communities for the LGBTQI and other marginalized groups. For instance, in a In an effort to keep users safe, the department has created Bright Sky SA, which enables users to determine whether they or someone they know is in an abusive relationship by filling out a risk assessment form. One of the Bright Skies feature is a brief questionnaire that may be used to identify various sorts of abuse and the many kinds of support that are offered. It informs the user about gender-based violence, the many types of gender-based violence, and the different case studies. The app uses geolocation and deliver details on the support services offered in South Africa, including a list of police stations, hospitals, and NGOs available. In addition to this, the department launched the Gender-Based Violence Command Center, a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week national call center that offers professional assistance to victims of gender-based violence. Social workers and other professionals are employed at the center and charged with answering and referring calls to relevant institutions, such as directing callers to SAPS and dispatching relevant help to assist gender-based violence in victims. This is important to improve accessibility by the public. The department will be implementing prevention and the early intervention measures to curb social ills, including gender-based violence and femicide and substance abuse among children and young people in 30 campuses per year over the medium term. The department will further implement Pillar 4, which deals with response care, support and healing of the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide by training 45 gender-based violence and femicide hotspots districts on the provision of psychosocial services. The Department of Social Development also has a victim empowerment program which focuses on changing people's attitudes, practices, and behaviors to promote the value and contribution of the Gender-Based Violence Command Center. The initiative is cross-sectoral and cross-departmental and is built on a solid collaboration with the government, NGOs, volunteers, the private sector, and academic institutions. The program emphasizes a victim-centered approach to crime and work to increase understanding of victim concerns, increase resources, meet the needs of victims, encourage volunteerism, and avoid secondary victimization, amongst other matters. Therefore, as the African National Congress, we support Budget Vote 19. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, House Chairperson. The National Freedom Party will support this budget vote tabled here today. Very important discussion, social development. Let us not forget the plight of the Palestinians, particularly children who have not seen their parents, some up to 20 years who are in detention without trial. This is the plight of Palestinian women and children. Let us also not forget the 16 women in Palestine that have been raped by Israeli soldiers, and more importantly, not only raped, but it was video recorded so that they could be blackmailed. And some people think it's a joke. Some people think it's, shocking, isn't it? Shocking. People forget where they come from when they jump ship. Yes, but anyway, Honorable Minister, I want to just touch on a few things, very important things. And I think we've had these discussions before. You will agree with me, there are many, many NGOs, NPOs, billions of rands are changing hands every day. The question is, what are they doing to save our women and children? All I can see is that when there's somebody raped, they are standing outside the courts with these billboards, no bail for rapists. But have they done anything in the community knowing something is going wrong? Nothing. So I ask you to deal with this issue because there's no oversight in the amount of money that comes in, particularly to NGOs and NPOs and the role, because they are supposed to be partners with us. Very importantly, the socio-economic conditions under which we live. A good example is, I was in Kimberley the other day, 127 taverns, 64 bottle stores. Now, what do you expect? If you look at the levels of alcohol and what is happening, it's politicians at the cause of it. because liquor boards give you license till 2 o'clock, politicians give you to 6 o'clock. I ask you, Minister, to deal with this. I ask you to leave a legacy behind by introducing, I say it again, Minister, starting at school level. The problem must be started at school level to identify children that's coming from dysfunctional families. If we can do that and help them, we will create a better society in the future. That's the only way we're going to do it. That's my plea to you. So what I find is this, that you need to work with safety ambassadors, social workers. And, you know, I was told by basic education that we have social workers. When I investigated it further, this is what I found. There's one social worker to an entire district, which you can't cope at all. Each school must have safety ambassadors to work with social workers who must work with the people in those communities, identify children that are coming from problem zones, help them so that we would prevent them from becoming rapists and murderers and being part and parcel of the crime. I'm running out of time. The NFP will support this budget vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next speaker will be Honorable Abrams.
Thank you, House Chair. The Department of Social Development's budget vote brings into question what measurable impact do these multi-billion rand budgets have on lifting 18.2 million South Africans out of extreme poverty and reducing inequality. Despite the Portfolio Committee's continual request since 2019 for impact reporting from DSD and its entities, we still only receive polished presentations, very often a contradiction to the lived realities on the ground. Instead, we are told X number of youth attended a once-off Imbizo or youth camp in X number of provinces, box-ticked, APP target met, job done, DSD and government have addressed the plight of the youth. But because there is no follow-up process on where in a year or two these young people end up, the question must be asked, did the once-off Imbizo actually have an impact? When the facilitator said, stay in school and don't do drugs, did the child actually complete matric? Did the child not do drugs or join a gang or become a teen parent? Chairperson, news articles and research reports and the like all point to an increase in social ills. Teen pregnancy is on the increase. Children as young as 9 are drug addicts, gun runners for gangs, or sold into prostitution. Our secure child and youth care centers have never been fuller, and the age of convicted and sentenced rapists and murderers getting younger and younger. There is no guarantee the billions spent are in fact having the intended impact, because there is no follow-up and, more importantly, no permanent presence for youth to return to. This is contrary to the 12 permanent Western Cape government-funded youth cafes located throughout the province, providing youth with access to skills, personal development, training, as well as economic and social development opportunities. The youth cafe doors are always open, and young people know exactly where to find them. The impact of the National Development Agency also inspires little confidence, Chairperson. A once respected institution, now a mere shadow of its former self, doing so poorly that National Treasury and the Presidency considered removing the entity's entire budget. The NDA spends 68% of its budget on employee salaries, 21% on admin costs, and only 8% on delivering on its mandate, strengthening CSOs involved in eradicating poverty. If the NDA was a private company with little to show for its multi-million rand annual budgets, it would not exist. But this entity and many more continue as taxpayers funded places of employment for ANC cadres. DST recently won an International Good Practice Award titled Gradual Extension of Social Security Coverage to Vulnerable Children. But how does South Africa celebrate this award when there are still children dying the slow and violent death of malnutrition, scavenging in landfills, eating wildflowers and sand to survive? We all know that 500 rand a month for a household is absolutely nothing in this economic climate. And I say household because that's exactly where it's spent on, never the child alone. The DA has long called for the child support grant to be in line with the food poverty line, an achievable goal if, for one, the ANC ministers and deputies search their souls for a shred of humility and compassion and let go of their excessive cabinet perks. How do orphan children celebrate this award when the child support top-up grant, the solution to a foster care crisis created by national government, still has no dedicated budget? Instead, this money is taken from savings from existing social grants. Speaking about savings, Chairperson, in 2022-2023, DSD declared a total of 9.162 billion in savings. How can this department have savings when South Africans are suffering under job-killing load shedding and skyrocketing cost of living? Families facing eviction, unable to afford their own homes, but forced to pay for ANC ministers' multiple homes. Savings when NGOs are underfunded, yet expected to mend our broken communities. Savings when neglected children in abusive homes wait for a social worker who will never come rescue them because there is no money to employ more. Recently, DSD presented a costing, not a budget, a costing, that in order to fulfill the NDP's vision 2030 to reach 55 social work professionals, it will need approximately 9 billion. The adjustment appropriation bill bulldozed through this parliament by the ANC's majority, supported by ANC-aligned parties, saw DSD's 9.162 billion rand, which could have funded the employment of social workers or provide some food relief to households, shifted to Transnet, the failing South African Post Office, the Department of Defense, and to top it all off, 300 million shifted to the Department of Home Affairs for political party funding, of which the ANC will receive the lion's share. Every party and member of parliament who vote in favor of these anti-poor bills should hang their heads in shame. In conclusion, Chairperson, 23 years ago, this department changed its name from the Department of Social Welfare to the Department of Social Development. But when 96.5% of the budget is still spent on social grants with little impact or social improvement on the ground, is it still not just a social welfare department? And with my few seconds, Minister, I wait in anticipation to hear what DSTV package this new DSTV channel will be screened on, and how the Minister proposes SASSA beneficiaries will pay for a dish, a decoder, and a monthly DSTV fee. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can we have order? Order. Order. The next speaker will be Honorable Bilankulu.
Ni khensa nkarhi lowu mi nga nyika wona mutshami wa xitulu eka holobye wa hina na mpfuno wa n'wina, eka vachaviseki hinkwenu lava mi nga kona, na maAfrika-Dzonga hinkwenu na milosa enhlekani. Ni tsaka ku tikuma ni ri un'wana wa swivulavuri na ku ta vula leswaku hi ri African National Congress ni sapota budget leyi mi nga yi boxa namuntlha, Minister. Ano tsakela ku yi support, kambe ni twisisa nkoka lowu yi ta yi endla eka vaaki. Tanihi muAfrika-Dzonga, ni twisisa swinene leswaku ku na vanhu vo tala lava hanyaka eka ntshikelelo na nxaniseko wo tala, lava dingaku mpfuno wo huma ka social development. Hi yo mhaka ni lava ku ya vula ku Minister, mi le ku endleni ka swona na nhlangano wa African National Congress. African National Congress i nhlangano wu ri woxe wu twisisaku na ku tiva ku xaniseka loku vanhu va ntima va nga hanya ka wona ka malembe yo tala. Hi yo mhaka va ha swi vona swi ringanerile ku vona leswaku va nga yisa emahlweni ku nyiketa mpfuneto eka vaaki. Honorable Masangu, mbyana yi vukula movha lowu fambaka. Loko movha yi nga ri ku fambeni, mbyana yi vukuli. A swi hlamarisi leswi mi swi vulaka. Mi vulavula hinkwaswo hikwalaho ka ku vona ku African National Congress yi le ku tirheni. Loko yi nga ri ku tirheni a mi nga ta vula nchumu because a mi nga ta vona nchumu. So mi le ku vuleni ka swin'wana because African National Congress yi le ku endleni ka swa nchumu leswi vonakaka. Ene moni mi byela ku ku na mindyangu leyo tala leyi namuntlha yi nga na pride ya ku hanya ehansi ka African National Congress, hi le ku pfunekeni.
Kuna vaaki vo tala namuntlha lava a va ta tlela va nga dyangi. Kuna vana vo tala lava ta va nga ri xikolweni namuntlha, but va le xikolweni kokwala ka African National Congress. Minister mi le ku endleni ka swona. Yisani mahlweni ntirho lowo saseka. Placing civil society in the center of effort of socio-economic transformation. Our efforts in socio-economic transformation are mainly underpinned by the principles of the Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, which is a direct response to economic challenges caused by, but not limited to COVID-19. The plan is about the creation of a transformed inclusive economy. In charting the way forward, the ANC in its January 8 statement re-emphasized the notion of the social impact, which places civil society organization in the center of efforts for socio-economic transformation. This further resonates with the National Development Plan, which prescribes the harnessing of energize of the people, growing an inclusive economy, building capabilities, promoting leadership and partnership throughout society to attain a national democratic society with a reduced unemployment rate and alleviated poverty. Over the medium term, the Department of Social Development aims to strengthen community engagement in 34 districts through implementing the community mobilization and empowerment framework, which promotes the use of the household and community profiling to inform service delivery and support provisions. In order to meet the vision of a democratic society, the NDP made explicit reference to building the capacity of civil society through extensive development of human resource. It provides a central role for non-profit organizations. A vibrant and diverse civil society is important in consolidating and sustaining democracy, as well as in holding government accountable. It is therefore important that the civil society organizations are properly capacitated to meet the tasks. The National Development Agency aims to strengthen the institutional capacity of civil society organizations that provide services to poor communities. Since 1994, government has involved civil society in various stages of policy development aimed at alleviating poverty and further building sustainable communities. Hence, the government is committed to capacitating them so they play a substantive role. In the words of the revolutionary Kofi Annan, I quote, "If we are to make poverty history, we must have the active participation of states, civil society organization, and private sector, as well as individual volunteers," close quote. In building and solidifying the social compact, the ANC is the organization committed to changing the lives of the impoverished, and that government needs to continue with the work of the concluding sectoral compact that will form pillars of the comprehensive social compact with all social partners, with the aim of supporting the broad approach and principles of the economic reconstruction and recovery plan. This compact should set out the obligations, commitments, and trade-offs needed from the private sector, organized labor, and civil society to ensure effective social and economic recovery and transformation. Therefore, the ANC in its 55th conference took a resolution that an inter-ministerial committee must be established in combat of the ensuring gender-based violence and femicide and other social ills. That this committee takes into account the role of civil society organization motivated by the medium-term strategic framework. Government department and civil society organization have developed the monitoring and evaluation framework and plan, which is used by department in reporting progress on the implementation of the national strategic plan. The strategic objective of social transformation is to transform and build a new society that is peaceful, equal, and just, as envisioned in the strategic frameworks, the Freedom Charter, Ready to Govern policy documents, the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, the National Development Plan Vision 2030, the UN Agenda 2030, and Africa's Agenda 2063. The ANC takes a firm stand in fighting the social ills and building social compact. Hence, it has proposed strategic interventions such as providing gender transformative training to address toxic masculinity in society, to address patriarchy and integrate positive masculinity, educate young people on Ubuntu, diversity and inclusive society to combat patriarch practices, explore the development of IT applications and systems to assist victims and survivors to call for help, upscale social behavioral change programs in dealing with gender-based violence and femicide, upscale the use of initiation schools as a platform to educate boys about gender-based violence and femicide and introduce family programs on gender-based violence and femicide and involve communities in dialogues. In this intervention, the role of NGOs remains in the epicenter. And the National Development Agency, civil society organizations have succeeded in mobilizing communities to take charge of their own development beyond the political boundaries. This has been achieved through activities like needs and beneficiary identification, project implementation, and fundraising. Despite this success, however, civil society experiences challenges in ensuring that their programs are effective and sustainable. These challenges include limited funding, lack of various skills, including management skills, organizational skills, resource mobilization, and accountability, which therefore informs the National Development Agency priorities for the 2023-24 financial year, which sets to align key international and national frameworks. The National Development Agency has a vision of developing a society free from poverty. This vision requires all developmental interventions provided by government institutions, the private sector, and civil society organization to have a coordination and integration mechanism. In order to ensure long-lasting impact of programs, there is a great need for strengthening the organizational, management, and administrative capacity of the civil society organization. It is generally accepted that local organization capacity is recognized as key for developmental effectiveness and empowerment of the poor. The ANC government is a government that believes in the bottom-up approach in solving our social ills. It is therefore paramount that all spheres of our society are well capacitated to play a meaningful role in building an ethical and capable developmental state. The role of the National Development Agency within the society development sector is to provide developmental programs and projects that support and provide a continuum for poverty relief for most especially the social grant beneficiaries, including self-help developmental interventions that brings income to these individuals and families through programs like the Extended Public Works Program and other related programs. The National Development Agency therefore plays a role to increase the number of civil society organizations and that have access to development intervention aimed at developing their capacities to efficiently manage, mobilize resources, and sustain themselves. The Department of Social Development has taken a firm stance with its social policy and integrated service delivery programs in creating an enabling environment for non-profit organizations and increase public trust and confidence in them through effective and fair regulations. In conclusion, Chair, we call on all of you to play an imperative role in fortifying the social compact and advancing the developmental state. Civil society organizations should be the epicenter of this revolutionary program. Together, we can build a society that is free for social ills, gender-based violence and femicide, drugs and substance abuse. The ANC for the national government to take urgent steps to enhance the crime-fighting capacity of law enforcement agencies by increasing the number of police personnel to match our country's population increase. In line with the international norms, urgent steps must also be taken to rebuild the capacity of law enforcement agencies and other institutions of the criminal justice system to make the work of civil society organization easy. Na cancer, hiyo maka hina hi support. Hina leswi hi lavaka ku endla swona. A wu support ntsena.
Thank you very much. The next and the last speaker will be the Honorable the Minister of Social Development.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I really would like to thank all the members, firstly, who have supported the budget. I also wish to thank the members for the contribution towards helping us to improve as a Department of Social Development and government in general. It is in our interest that we have to continue doing the best we can to improve our system so that we can deliver better to our people. And with regard to the communications, I heard some noises there about the DSD TV. The portfolio committee has been on numerous occasions complained about the lack of communication within the DSD portfolio. And so the truth of the matter is that government cannot afford airtime and production costs for our content through outsourced communication platforms, bottom line. And it's time we took charge of the narrative ourselves, because we're the ones that do the work on the ground, and yourselves as members, you'll also find yourselves, we'll follow you and make sure that the issues that we are raised are also played on the platform. This platform also enables government to control that narrative, as I said, and the DSD TV is over the top platform, which is normally called OTP, provides government with an invaluable opportunity to talk to its beneficiaries at a reduced cost, because I heard the issue also was about the money, and the platform creates internal capacity and skills to produce DSD related content. It's important for us to communicate our content, and it's not propaganda, by the way. People say propaganda is something else that is developed maybe to try and cover, but also it's a wrong notion, this thing of thinking propaganda is always about negative. We, as the government of the African National Congress, have been paying social grants from the time that we came into government, and there shouldn't be any illusion about it that we are about to cut or we are about to reduce. In fact, if we were to look at it, we've been doing our best to try and increase the social grants in the best way that we can. And I'd also like to indicate, Honorable Mvana, thank you for your comments that will indeed improve on toll-free line to ensure that we have better access to our services offering. And I have tasked the department together with the agencies to work on a single line that is more reliable and real time. There's no doubt that social grants have also been one of our country's most effective poverty alleviation programs and will continue to be implemented. There's no policy decision to take away the grants. In fact, I'm not standing here and presenting a budget for elections. That must be made clear from the beginning, from the time that this government, and if I look at all the ministers who've been here before me, they laid the basis for what we have today. They built the foundation from which we are working. And so every year when we come here and present the budget, we're not presenting budget for elections, we're presenting budgets that will help us service our people and give them the best that we can. And I know that in many instances, the budget, sometimes the expenditure thereof, the oversight thereof, sometimes there are problems, and there's also corruption somewhere in the middle. My task and the task of the DM and everyone is to make sure that the money is spent properly. Honorable Brent, we are working with the Post Bank on the challenges that affect our payment of the grants. And Honorable Van der Merwe, I'm sure you may not have had the time to look at the developments in Gauteng province regarding the NPO. We were the first to jump and say, can we have a conversation? This is actually not going to work for us. And we engaged particularly the MEC and the Premier. And I think we listened to civil society organizations and the NPOs, because they also stood up and said, you cannot do this to us. We cannot afford to take away money from NPOs. We cannot afford that, because not only are they an extension in a way because we give them the resources, we believe that those are the people who are on day-to-day basis on the ground, who should be working with local government structures. And Honorable Nkwankwa, thank you and other members for supporting our budget vote. I can assure you that we are working on developing, operationalizing the National Integrated Social Protection Information System, known better as NISPIS. with a view to derive the value of integrating service delivery data, which will speak to digital profiling. And I think SASSA has been a very good example of how when we use technology, and I know at the beginning people were saying, hey, but how are the people in the rural areas going to be able to apply? Right at the beginning, we had 15 million applications. That then showed us that it is possible for us to reach people, but it's our responsibility also to make sure that the gadgets, to make sure that those that give the data and all, we work with them, because when data is not available to people, it becomes very difficult for them. And I was shocked actually when I was looking at the figures of the reach of telephony and the gadgets in hands of people in the country. It runs up to 22 million. And that to us is teaching us a lesson that we need to look at that and what kind of gadgets do they have? How do we make it easy for us? And Honorable Sakers, you may be aware that we have child ambassadors across all provinces who represent children in their provinces. Even now during Child Protection Week, they were engaged. And Honorable Hlongo, that we are indeed trying to reach all tertiary institutions. That's what we did yesterday. Also was part of the program of reaching out to tertiary institution. And yesterday there was a launch of the Assist app, where students can get help on the use of drugs and alcohol. And I think I must be able to thank the woman who stood up there yesterday and answered all the questions, including how many times does she take alcohol? Has she ever taken drugs? It was shocking to sit there and listen, but it was an example to the rest of the students that were there. Honorable Abrams, I'm confident that the NDA will do a lot better this year, especially with the new dynamic board in place, as I indicated earlier on. We have Umam Ruth Beng. She takes no prisoners, that one. We are working on a turnaround strategy and we'll be augmenting the budget. But also I'd like to thank Honorable Sheikh Imam, and the members also do call us, and we try by all means to respond to their calls. And also with regard to the homelessness in South Africa, I'm hoping that the document that we have developed as a document, it's a research actually that was done. I'm hoping that members can take that and look at it and improve it, because we had an experience during COVID-19 where all the homeless people needed to be taken somewhere. Post-COVID, they are back on the streets, and even the legal services that we were giving to them, we didn't continue them. We have to continue that, because those people are out on the street not by choice. They are out on the streets due to the circumstances. Well, yes, the municipalities are supposed to take responsibility. Unfortunately, sometimes they don't. And during COVID-19, it became clear Uguti homeless are even homeless within our own space. And we need to take responsibility for that. With regards to the families, we are also responsible, as everyone is aware, we are responsible for the programs that are related to taking care of families. But again, I'd like to say that we cannot do this alone. We have to do this collectively. And lastly, so Chair, I do want to highlight that we will continue to addressing the scourge of gender-based violence and femicide, substance abuse and alcohol abuse. And I fully agree the number of taverns, and I fully agree it is us, the government also, that give these licenses. We must be careful where in fact, most of these taverns in our communities, especially, is where you find that they are even around the churches and all, and yet we give that. The employment of social workers, improvement on the effectiveness of the NPOs, working with strategic partners. I do want here to take opportunity and thank all strategic partners, from churches to business, to all those who step up in supporting us, especially during the times of disaster. I wish to thank all those who are always with us, and also to indicate that, by the way, we want to work with them closely so that they appreciate and understand that DSD in its portfolio, it never leaves the community. So some come and then they bring whatever they bring and then they disappear. We don't leave the Oh, sorry,
Thank
I'm
you.
seeing
It's on a
47 seconds.
negative.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Pheli ixesha lam, enkosi.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, you are reminded that the House hybrid plenary to debate Parliament's budget vote will take place at 1400 in the Good Hope Chamber. That concludes the debate and the business of this mini plenary session. The mini plenary will now rise.